Hello. How about now? Is it working now? Is it working now? Hello? Hello? So I take it you can hear me now? Oh, okay, okay, fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. Great. I think I know how to make it work better now. Um, so if you want to recap from yesterday, you can just go back to the old to the last video. We'd been through some of the basic elements. We started with talking about themes and how they're useful. We went through these archetypes. We were going through these. I think we went through this one. We're done motivation. We're done relational attributes. We're done consistency and evolution. If anyone that was here for the last, I think this is where the audio glitched out. So I'll just start from here, and then we'll go into the other two for today. Okay. So the whole concept of these idiosyncrasies is um, putting in sort of like, I think of it as like spice features for your characters. Like say the example I gave yesterday was this guy in this movie Ocean's 11, in the first Ocean's 11, where in every scene Brad Pitt just seemed to be eating something. It was either a burger, a pack of chips, just something. That was the idiosyncrasy of his character. Sometimes it's maybe a character that taps their foot, or a character that has a stammer, with the speech pattern as well. Maybe a character with an accent. These are just sort of little things, and not every character has to have some idiosyncrasies, but these are sort of little things that you can put into characters to make them feel a bit more rounded, basically. I remember these books I used to read when I was younger, the Jack Richard books, where his thing was, like there would be some tense conversation going on, and it would say Jack said nothing, and that was sort of like his thing, saying nothing. But yeah, so yeah, the speech pattern continued. When we're writing speech, especially in dialogue, there is this habit that we tend to get into. It's the he said, she said, she asked, she spoke, she told, and it's easy to see why we fall into that pattern, because it's just easier to write that way. But I'll do a little, I guess, demonstration. So if you think about these two conversations, where is my key? He asked. Well, I don't know. Where did you keep it? She replied. Well, I can't remember. He said. Well, when last did you see it? She asked. This is one way of phrasing the conversation. Another way of saying exactly the same dialogue would be, have you seen my keys? He patted himself down and swung his eyes to the table. No, I haven't. Her eyes remained on the dishes as she washed them. He walked around, searching up and below. Well, when last did you see it? Etc. etc. You get the idea. In both these stories, the way the dialogue is presented, you're talking about the same thing. Someone cannot find their keys. Whereas one has more cinematic graphic elements, the other is more sort of like just he said, she said, and one helps the reader also imagine what you are saying. So it's like giving it another dimension, basically, and helping the person imagine it better. Conflict and dimension. I think I touched on this yesterday as well. It's just basically this idea that you have to be aware that your character cannot be one dimensional, and this is something where a lot of the times when we try to maybe write too closely to an archetype, we want to create a hero character, then everything about our character has to be heroic, and this character then has no conflict within them, basically, so it's something you should always keep in mind, that as much as, yes, you are trying to create XYZ kind of characters, you need to have some kind of conflict within these characters. If not, they're sort of like perfect, and then there is no need for the character to grow. So these kind of characters sort of have no arc, basically, which isn't cool. And then for character and time is for you to always think of your character as not a thing that exists the moment you write them into the page, but as a thing that exists long before then. So they have to have some kind of history, where they came from, what their parents were like, what kind of culture they grew up on, and all these things that even sort of inform how they behave currently. And in a lot of ways, even how the reader tends to perceive them. The way we would perceive a character that we know that, historically this is like a lost prince, versus the way we would, perceive a character who by reference is like, let's say a lost slave is different, because it's just different ideas of their past. And then that brings us to where we were supposed to be starting today. I had the internet in kind yesterday, and that is plot. In its most simple terms, it's just a sequence that the story unfolds with, and here I sort of have a bunch of different typical plot lines that we see. So, the first one where you sort of have things get off to a normal start, and, then there is a rise, then things get better and get better. This is a very typical adventure story, and it's better, and then, then the body comes in, and then things start to dip, and then it gets really terrible, and it looks like, the world is going to be over. And then, of course, the hero comes through, and then things go up and up and up and up. Then you have the second one. This is where you have your what is this movie with Will Smith, where he's with his son. Oof, I can't remember the name now. There's this movie with Will Smith where he's with his son, and they're really, really broke, and they're trying to sort of work, and he's trying to, like, like work his way from the bottom, and it's a really, really horrible progression as he moves up. I'm gonna remember the name of this movie eventually, but yeah, like it sort of like gets better, and then it seemed to get bad again, and then it like gets awesome, and then you have the other one, where it starts off awesome, and then something bad has to happen to the hero, and then he loses himself, and then he becomes like this uh terrible underbelly person, and then he maybe would realize something, and then that would allow him transform and then rise back to the top. And then you have this last one, which is sort of where people like Kafka like to write, where the story starts bad and ends worse. It's just a complete tragedy. But yeah, plots can exist in different forms. So you can have something that is linear, which means the storyline generally follows from point A to point B, and it's a straight line, time wise. You can have non-linear, where maybe this can be things happening the same time. Sometimes things happening in maybe one dimension in a different timeline, in another dimension in a different timeline. All this kind of weird stuff. You can have, there's all manners of ways you can arrange events, basically. And but some of the things you really want to think about when you think about your plotting is, first of all, the overarching plot. So this is the plot that is connected to the theme. And if you look at the genre, generally you would be able to tell, okay, this is how plots are generally framed in this genre. So you come up with that. Within that plot, you would now have subplots. So these subplots are sort of plots that connect the lives of your characters within within the plot line. So if you have a guy and his sidekick, and maybe the sidekick is trying to say, "Oh, I want you to be my mentor," and they're like, "No." And then somewhere along the line, if you've watched a lot of these kung fu movies, you see this, you would eventually become, accept the person as the mentor. Yay. Now, these are subplots that are underneath, the big plots. And then these subplots a lot of the times the big plot a lot of the times can also be broken into arcs. So you start with a sort of like what you would call it, like and you see this when I'm actually presenting my own work on here. You sort of start with the introductory arc, where they sort of you just want to draw them in. Then you start with the world expansion arc, where you really sucking the person in. Then you start with and then you start sort of sprinkling in the conflict, at this point. Then you move to like your conflict arc, then you move to your resolution arc, basically. Now, this is obviously just for adventure stories. Different, for romance, it would be, you would start with the boy meets girl arc, and like I said, sometimes it can start with, oh, they're already in a relationship, and then later there's a flashback and you see the boy meets girl when it's non-linear. But it's just still keeping in mind that, okay, these are the different arcs that I need to fulfill to make the story work within the genre that I'm trying to make it work in. The pace is how it progresses. So sometimes you read a book or you watch a movie and you're just like, oh jeez, like it's just never moving forward. And sometimes you read stuff and you're just thinking, whoa, 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 like this is even too quick. A lot of the times the audience you're writing for will determine what pace is best. If you're writing for a younger audience, you generally want to write with a faster pace, faster event progression, more action. If you're writing for a more mature audience that would have the time to sit down, and you can consider sort of like slowing down your pace. But yeah, genuinely the things to keep in mind for plots, just to recap before we move into other bits, is always keep in mind what is the overarching plot from your theme. So if your theme is good versus evil, how does this happen? Then in between, what is the plot between the lives of all these characters and how they relate to each other, because those are going to have subplots. And then keep your arcs in mind as well, of, okay, if this is the genre you're writing, and it's so important to study whatever genre you want to write in, so you're not wasting your time trying techniques that don't work. you know and the good thing is, this doesn't mean you might be thinking, oh, but I want to create something original. When you already know what works, this then allows you to work within that scope to create something that is unique and that is original. So yes, I think that is pretty much it for plot. And then for techniques, these are some of the things we're going to be looking at: the famous show don't tell style, how to co-create your reader when they're reading your work, how to use literary devices, how to add textuality to your language, and how to fine tune your tone to be a bit more poetic, should I say. So, show don't tell. This is one of the most famous things they say in writing. Oh, show don't tell, show don't tell. The sign of a great writer, show don't tell. What does it actually mean? It simply means when you can, instead of just telling the reader something, show them. And that way they have to sort of engage with their own imagination to make an inference. And that sense of participation makes them feel good. So basically, you could say, the boy looked at her feeling shy, or the boy looked at her with shyness in his eyes, or you can say the boy looked at her, turned away immediately, a red blush washing across his face, or across his cheek. For the last one, you haven't mentioned the word shy, but if the reader, was looking at someone, they would imagine you looking at someone, looking away, blushing. They would infer that, okay, clearly this person is shy. And readers enjoy this. They enjoy all manners of anything they can connect whenever, because it makes them also feel in a very real way, like they are co-creating the story as well. So it makes it very, very real for the person's imagination. So wherever you can, and I say wherever you can because sometimes, maybe to save words or to explain certain things that might be a bit difficult to show because maybe it's a concept that people are not familiar enough with, that if you were describing it in a showy way, it might be a bit difficult to see. In those situations, of course, you might have to tell, and I say this all the time, there is no hard fast rule. You just have to do what works for your story. Basically, these are just best practices. And then style, what does it actually mean when people say, oh, like this guy's style, or I need to find my style? Simply put, your style is just your habit of mind. It's like your signature. It's almost like the pattern your writing hand talks in. And this is a thing where, even as people in our actual speech, there is a way everybody speaks. That is why if you saw someone doing an impression of you, it would look funny because, you'd look at it and be like, yeah, this is sort of, how, how I speak. It's in our handwriting as well. We have a unique sort of, so we have a version of this for writing as well. And what I try to tell people is the best way you can write is to write best in your style. Sometimes, especially for newer writers, we have a writer we really admire. So we think, oh, what I want to do is I want to copy this writer's style. I want to sound like this writer. And, I think it's almost impossible to start writing without doing this on some level because you want to sound like the people that inspire you and stuff. But yeah, ultimately it just doesn't work because at best it would be a second-rate version of this awesome writer. But when you master your own style and it's like learning how to play an instrument. You learn to be better in your style. Then you just become the best you can be. And this really comes from practicing, just writing a lot and writing a lot, not trying to imitate other writers. And then sometimes you might find yourself imitating someone else. Is fine. Just write it and write it away. Eventually, you would start, sort of noticing, oh, this is how I sound and this is how I like to sound. And, hopefully you would even like it. And then co-creating. This is something that I like to do. I don't know how popular it is in the writing world, but I I don't like giving generic generic terminologies to anything. So say I wouldn't say the girl was wearing a red dress because I feel like I haven't given you the reader anything to create with. If I say the hibiscus colored dress, I feel like you have, like, yeah, like there's too many shades of red, if that makes sense. So generally, like what I mean by this co-creating with the reader's imagination is trying to give the reader terms that allows their imagination to be as vivid as possible. Sometimes this is this could be a using metaphors or similes. It's not even necessarily about just word choices, but just trying to use terms that engage the reader's imagination as much as possible, so the experience feels more immersive and less generic. And of course, naturally, moving from there to here, we would have literary devices. These are your similes, your metaphors, alliteration, oxymorons, hyperboles, onomatopoeias, etc., etc. I can't go through all of these, but it's just an advice generally to be aware of these devices and try to fit them in. Not in a way that it just seems like you're just trying to do it just to do it, but when the opportunity presents itself, descriptive metaphors are some of the best descriptions. If you wanted to describe, I think something about that here. Like, yeah, like looking at this, for example, you could describe the skin as pale, the color of milk, brown, or the color of honey. Now, all these things, like pale and milk are both white, but it's different. In the way porcelain would give you a different idea of white. In the way brown would give you one idea. In the way, if I said honey, it would give you another idea. If I say sand, it will give you an idea. If I say dirt, it will give you another idea. So it's just, being aware that words that mean exactly, technically speaking, the same thing, in context to other things and how we relate to those words, because of what milk is. It's something we drink and we think of as sweet and all that. If I describe the skin to be the color of milk, you would almost think of it to be edible, if that makes sense. But if I describe the skin as pale, it's still white, but now it sounds like they're sick. So these are some things to keep in mind. What I was saying about the metaphor, for example, if imagine you wanted to describe a character and um, you said William was part man and mostly mountain. He towered over most men with an axe for a jaw and a hand that looked like it could crush your skull. You could have just easily said, "Oh, William was a large, strong guy." But phrasing it with these sort of, saying a jaw for an axe gives an image. And because of what an axe is, and what a jaw represents as well, it gives like, you know, a certain idea describing the person as part man and mostly mountain. Also gives like, this idea of something really, really strong. So yeah, so these are just some ways to think about your descriptions. And then tone and poetics, this is mainly around how you present your language. This is also going to have a lot to do with your style, and it's influenced by different things. I like poetry, I like rap, I like oral sounding kind of stories. I also like cool literature, fancy sentences. So I sort of have like a blend of all these things in my own style. But um I sort of, the example I have here, I say life is painful and you cannot escape it. And then there's another line saying, pain is the sinking of fangs, the sting of the venom. It is the taste of bitter, but alas, you cannot spit. These two lines are saying exactly the same thing. Life is painful, you cannot escape it, but one is very poetic in its description. It's the sinking of the fang, the sting of the venom, the taste of bitter, but alas, you cannot spit. This idea of something bitter in your mouth, but you can't spit it out, so you must accept it. You must swallow it. So this is really going to come from you knowing knowing what kind of genre you're working in, what kind of tone you want to give it, what kind of tone that you can write in. Because if you read like a Charles Bukowski poem compared to like a Shakespeare poem, or even any other, a lot of other modern poets, they don't sound anything alike, because these are just two completely different poetic styles, and everybody's going to have their one. So for you, it's to find the one that works for you, and obviously stick to that one. But think about these things when you construct your sentences, because the more um, the better your poetry arrangement in your sentences, the more joy your reader would get, and they wouldn't even know why. Sometimes you read like a Chimamanda book and you're just thinking, how is it possible that it's just like one sentence after the other? That is because she writes in a almost like in the style of a poet. So yes, I think we're at the end. So yeah, 30 minutes in and we are done for today. Fantastic. Um, so now that we're done with this, tomorrow I'm actually going to be able to present. Um, Tomorrow I'm actually going to present the work that I'll be doing. So sort of like my own story. If you have your own story, obviously, like it would be a good time to get it out of under your bed as well. But yes, I'm hoping tomorrow to present sort of the story that I'll be working on. I want it to be like a live experiment. So as I do the chapters, I'm going to be streaming at really odd times. Just whenever I am writing, I'm just going to just try and stream, people can follow it. I'm going to also leave links to the story so you can follow it as I progress through. And so this will give me a chance to sort of show you in a very practical sense all these things that I've been talking about. So when I'm hoping when you see me building the world of the story, the character relationships, and all these things, it would really help put it in perspective for you that, oh, okay, all these things that he's been blah blahing about, this is how I can actually execute them. And thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe. That way it would pop up when I'm doing the streams and you don't get to miss out. And yes, thank you.